All right, freshmen, let's talk about one of my favorite topics. Let's talk about comic books. I've been a big fan of comic books for a long time, and you are going to be reading a comic book in a little bit as part of our short story unit. And I want to make sure that you understand what is happening on the comic book page because sometimes, we haven't read comic books in school because they're kind of looked at as not very academic, and a lot of times we push comic books off to the side and we say, this isn't literature. I disagree with that. So we're going to read comic books, but some of us are comic book illiterate. We don't know how to read a comic book because we've never been exposed to them, and we really don't understand how the flow of the page happens. So I'm going to show you a couple pages, and we're going to talk about how to read a comic book. So this is one of my favorite characters, the Amazing Spider-Man. I just found some random pages online from Spider-Man comics, and we're going to kind of talk about how the page flows and how you read a comic book, right? So on this one, this is a fairly simple panel layout. So you have one big panel here, one big panel here, and three panels at the bottom of the page. And just like when you read a book, your rule is you want to go from left to right, and you want to start at the top and you want to go down to the bottom. So if I'm reading this page, I'm going to start up here in this corner, and I'm going to kind of read these word balloons from left to right and go down here to this bottom one, and then I would move on to this panel and I would go left to right, and then I come down to this one and I'd read this top one first and then this bottom one, and then we'd go to this one. It only has one balloon, and then you would read this one first and then these ones next, right? So you're going through this just like you do a book, left to right and from top to bottom. This next page is a little more difficult, and so we have Spider-Man again, and we have two panels on the top, three in the middle row, three on the bottom. You have your kind of standard 9-panel layout, but the problem is we have kind of a smaller panel here, a really small panel here, and a small panel here. So in this case, you would read this balloon first, and then this one down here. And then you would read all three of these, and you can see how these three balloons are all connected. It's all one big thought. And then as you get to this panel, you'd start up here and you'd go down to here. So remember, left to right, top to bottom. In this panel would be the next one. You'd go and read this thought balloon. Anytime you see a balloon that looks like a cloud and it has dots like that, that's his thoughts. And then I would read this speech balloon. And then we would go here and read this one and then this one. And then we read this one and then this one, and then we would read this top one, then this bottom one, and then this bottom one, and then we would go and read this one. This one's interesting because it's between panels, which is kind of interesting, and then we would read these two. And as comic books have grown up and become more modern, so have the panel layouts. So this is a very modern looking panel layout, and we have really 4 panels. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like they're fighting Venom. And in this one, you would read this balloon first, then this one, then this balloon, and then this one, this balloon, and then this balloon, which is kind of a little different, and then this one, and then this one, and then this balloon and that one. And it's the same left to right, top to bottom as you go along. Really quickly though, before we leave, I also want to make note that in a comic book, because you're looking at static images, there's things that happen with time in a comic book. Because this obviously is happening before this, but something happened in between this and in between this. And it happens in this space right here. This is what we call the gutter. Comic book readers call this the gutter. This right here is a gutter, right? And things are happening in this space that we don't actually see because the artist just draws this and draws this. And we can see that in this panel, this woman in the Spider-Man shirt is sitting down, and then in this next panel, she's standing up. Well, she didn't all of a sudden appear standing up. In this gutter, she stood up and then walked a little ways, and we got to this scene, right? And then right here we can see that Spider-Man is this far away, and this man in this hat is over here. But in the next panel, they're much closer. Well, they didn't all of a sudden appear. In this gutter right here, Spider-Man got closer to him, right? So you need to pay attention to what is happening in between the panels, because that's part of the comic book experience. Our mind fills in those blanks. We know that when this woman is getting out of the car, the next thing she's going to do is stand up, and now there she is. She stood up, and in our mind, we had all that action play out, but we don't actually see it on the comic book page. Hopefully this has been just a little primer for you to help you familiarize yourself with the medium of comic books, and I hope that you really enjoy reading comic books in our class.